The Titanic was the most famous ocean liner of all time, or at least it was until 1911, when her sister ship, the Olympic, got into an accident that left her dead in the water. But this is not their story. This is the story of their lesser-known sister, the RMS Queen Elizabeth, the forgotten ghost ship. What makes the Titanic so fascinating isn't just its size, the fact it sank, but the stories of hauntings on board. There have been many reports of strange things happening on the ship, from unexplained cold spots to the sighting of ghosts. Is the same true for the Queen Elizabeth? What kind of ghostly activity has occurred on this ship? And is there a reason why it has been forgotten? Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to look at one of the lesser-known ships of the White Star Line, the RMS Queen Elizabeth. She may be less famous than her sister, the Titanic, but that doesn't mean she hasn't had her fair share of mysteries. Make sure to stick around to the end if you want to find out what could be haunting her to this day. As mentioned, the RMS Queen Elizabeth was one of the 3 Olympic-class ocean liners built by the White Star Line. She set sail for the first time in 1908, making her the first of her class to be completed. Unlike her sister, the Titanic, which sank in 1911 after hitting an iceberg, the Queen Elizabeth enjoyed a much more successful life. She wasn't involved in any major accidents during her time sailing. Instead, she served as a troop transport during World War I before being returned to service in 1920. In 1936, she was refitted with new engines, allowing her to keep up with newer and larger ships. The Queen Elizabeth continued to sail until 1946, over 30 years after she first set sail. She then became a storage ship before being scrapped in 1968. It may come as no surprise that a ship that was sailing as late as 1968 would have no reports of hauntings. After all, the age of the great ocean liners was coming to an end, and something like the Titanic was seen as a relic of the past. However, even though no one really expected the Queen Elizabeth to be haunted, that didn't stop some strange things from happening on board. In 1957, a crew member was working on the propeller of the ship when he saw the ghost of a young girl. The girl was dressed in white and she appeared to be looking for someone. A little while later, he saw her talking to a sailor, and then they both disappeared. Another crew member claimed to have seen the ghost of a woman dressed in Edwardian clothing. He said the apparition seemed to be searching for someone as it walked around the upper decks. Many of the sightings of her were near the area of the ship where first-class passengers would have dined. One of the most famous sightings on the ship was of a man who was seen walking around the ship with his pet dog. He appeared to be looking for someone, just as the woman in white had. One day, a crew member asked an older sailor about the ghost and the dog. According to the old sailor, the ghost was that of Captain John Henry Wilson and his dog, whose real name was Jock. They had been on board during the sinking of the Titanic. When they had realized the ship was doomed, they grabbed lifebuoys and jumped into the water. Unfortunately, they both froze to death. To this day, some say you can see them walking on the deck of the ship looking for survivors. While these may sound like simple stories, they are actually quite common among seafarers. Ghosts on ships aren't unheard of, especially those that have been lost at sea. Sometimes they seem to appear at places where people are waiting to be rescued, such as the captain and his dog. Other times, they seem to just be wandering the ship aimlessly, perhaps looking for answers as to why they died. But there are other possible explanations for these sightings. As we mentioned earlier, the Queen Elizabeth served as a troop transport during World War II. It's possible that some of the apparitions seen on board are actually those of soldiers who died on the ship. It wouldn't be hard to understand if they were still looking for their way home. After all, war can bring out the spirits in people. However, there are other reports of hauntings on board the ship that can't be explained away as simply the result of war. For example, there are reports of an organ playing music by itself. This music can sometimes be heard coming from the empty ballroom of the ship. Some believe this could be the ghost of a former band leader, Wallace Hartley. Hartley was on the Titanic when it sank, and he played music to calm down the panicking passengers until the very end. Could his ghost have transferred over to the Queen Elizabeth? Maybe. Or maybe it's simply a case of a musician continuing to play his music even in death. Another possible haunting comes from the engine room of the ship. Here, workers reported hearing the sounds of hammers against metal. Since the ship was built in 1908, this would have been done by hand. Could it be the ghost of one of the workers who died in the ship's construction? Perhaps. But it could also be the ghost of a sailor from another ship altogether. See, the sounds of hammers against metal are not just heard on the Queen Elizabeth, but also on the nearby Cape Race, a lighthouse off the coast of Newfoundland. It's here that the captain of the Titanic saw the last flares from the captain of the nearby ship. These flares warned him that there were other ships nearby and that he should slow down. Unfortunately, the captain of the Titanic either didn't see the flares or ignored them, leading to the disaster. Could the ghost of the captain be trying to warn those on the Queen Elizabeth that there is danger ahead? That might explain why many of the ghosts on board seem to be warning people of danger. Of course, there's no actual evidence to support this theory. But one thing's for certain. If the captain of the Titanic were to appear on the Queen Elizabeth, he would definitely have some explaining to do. So why exactly has the Queen Elizabeth been forgotten? Well, it's probably because she didn't sink. For many years, the Titanic was seen as a metaphor for hubris. Mankind had created something beautiful and magnificent, only to lose it to nature. The Queen Elizabeth represents the opposite. While she wasn't as luxurious as her sister, she managed to survive even when that ship couldn't. Because of this, the sinking of the Titanic helped to ensure that the Queen Elizabeth would be remembered for all time. However, there are some theories that the sinking of the Titanic was actually caused by sabotage. If this is true, then it's likely that the Queen Elizabeth could have been the intended target. After all, it was scheduled to take the place of the Titanic on its route, bringing even more passengers and crew on board. It's possible that the reason we haven't seen any ghost on the Queen Elizabeth is because the ship was never truly safe. In the end, the truth behind the sinking of the Titanic and the hauntings on the Queen Elizabeth may never be fully known. All we can do is speculate and make guesses based on the evidence. But one thing's for sure, there will always be mysteries surrounding these ships and their connection to the supernatural. What do you think happened to the Queen Elizabeth? Do you think it was haunted by the ghosts of passengers and crew members? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're down there, make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss any more of our videos. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.